Good day. This is Rehana de Campong,
Lacey Sarmiento,
Yanessa Tumambing,
and Gab, and we will be presenting our financial analysis of Pepsi Cola Products Philippines Incorporated for the years 2017, 2018, and 2019.
Before we begin with our analysis, it is only fitting for us to first discuss a brief introduction about the company we have chosen. Pepsi Cola Products Philippines Inc., or PCPPI, is a stock corporation that has been registered with the Philippine Exchange Commission since March 8, 1989.
the company primarily ventures on a wide range of carbonated soft drinks, non-carbonated beverages, and snacks offered in various package types and sizes. These products mainly cater to a wide range of customers. PCPPI also provides employment through its extensive distribution network, as it has established 14 manufacturing facilities across the nation, serving at least 700,000 outlets.
After discussing a brief background on PCPPI, let us now analyze its stock valuation for the years 2017 to 2019. It can be analyzed that the closing price in 2018 compared to the closing price in 2017 significantly decreased, which is affiliated with a decline in the entity's price-earnings ratio and earnings per share. In such a scenario, the cash flows are the source of value principle can be applied as investors are not entirely confident of the company's future operations and thus expect that future cash flows to be received at a low value. Nonetheless, with increased income in 2019, the entity was able to improve its competency in the market and strengthen stock price to 1.92 pesos at the end of 2019.
The declaration of the dividends can also explain the fluctuation of the stock prices in the market. In 2017, the company declared 255 million pesos cash dividend, or 0.069 pesos per share, significantly higher than the cash dividends declared in 2019 and 2018. This can be explained by the signaling theory, where dividends are viewed favorably by the investors since it signals corporate health and earnings growth, and thus strengthening stock price in 2017. Conversely, when a firm pays dividends lower than the previous declaration, this may be denoted by stockholders as the entity in an unfavorable position, weakening stock price in the market reflected in 2018's closing stock price.
Further analysis of external events shows that the noteworthy decrease in stock prices from the years 2017 to 2018 could be attributed to the impact of the train law that put into effect higher consumption taxes, especially on soft drinks, which comprise the main products that the firm sells. This then directly affected the company, and in January 2018 alone, the company paid 666 million pesos in taxes due to train.
On the other hand, interpreting the movement of the stock prices in 2020, it can be deduced that there is a stable fluctuation from January to May, as prices range from 1.85 to 1.91 only. This may be an indicator that investors are less skeptical in current year's performance compared to its financial position in 2018. Notice, however, that the minimal movement is also influenced by external factors such as the economic recession and the pandemic happening, so investors do not foresee a relevant growth in the entity's operations. Although the continuing decline in closing prices from April until June are at minimal, this must still be noted as it may signify a further weakening of prices in the succeeding periods.
The stock price today of 1.30 pesos was calculated using the Gordon Constant Growth Model. Analyzing the stock valuation from the computation, the stock price today of 1.30 pesos is lower than the average closing stock price of June 2020 of 1.79 pesos, meaning that the stock price is overvalued. Furthermore, a comparison of the company's yield of 2.59% and its CAPM return of 4.71% also shows that the stock is overvalued. And when a stock is overvalued, it means that the investment will not adequately compensate for the risk taken. Or in other words, the investor is paying too much to hold the risk. Thus, the investor should sell its stock of PCPPI.
As of now, PCPPI has not declared dividends since its last in 2019. In September 10, 2020, the company announced that it would be delisting from the Philippine Stock Exchange in view of the Korean firm Lot Chilsung Beverage conducting a tender offer to acquire the shares of remaining public shareholders. Both non-declaration of dividends and delisting serve as negative signals about the company, and possibly the stock market in general not faring well.
While heavily reliant on debt, the company does not have any bonds payable. All of its debt are loans from local banks. The decision not to have bonds may be in line with the absence of an active bond market in the Philippines.
Let us now move on to the analysis of the company's leverage. First, we will discuss the operating leverage of the company. As reflected in the table, it can be deduced that the degree of operating leverage, or DOL, of the entity throughout the 3 years highly varies. Its DOL of 151.63 in 2019 is much higher than the previous years, which means that EBIT, or operating income, is highly sensitive to a change in sales. This is a good indication as generating more sales can outsize changes in its profits. Yet, it must be emphasized that a high DOL is also riskier due to a large proportion of the fixed assets, which is uncontrollable compared to variable cost. The company also has a higher chance of incurring losses, assuming that its sales declined. With this, the entity must double its effort of selling its products and attempt to lessen its fixed cost. This, however, is a different scenario compared with 2018, as DOL has substantially decreased and became negative during that year, indicating that the entity had more variable costs than its fixed costs and that it is in a net loss position. Additionally, the varying DOL also means that the entity has to balance the proportion of both its fixed and variable, so that being subjected to a high risk of generating operating income or incurring more losses due to variable costs will be lessened.
Further analysis on decisions made by PCPPI's management shows that the company had increased their capital expenditures in 2019, which explains the notable increase in DOL from the years 2018 and 2019, as mentioned previously. This increase in capital expenditure is because the firm had decided to invest more to meet higher sales volumes because of the losses experienced in 2018 from the effects of the train law.
Secondly is the financial leverage of the company. As seen in the table, the degree of financial leverage, or DFL, of the company has been decreasing for the past 3 years. This continuous decrease in risk could be better for the company, as it means that the firm would have lower interest payments. With high financial leverage, there would be a higher chance for the company to fail in being able to pay back its debt. Additionally, since the operating income of the company is not as stable with the company's operating loss in 2018, it might be better for it to limit its debt to easily manageable levels.
Last would be our analysis for the total leverage. It is noticeable that the DTL in 2018 was a negative, and this simply indicates that the company's fixed costs were higher than its contribution margin. This is evident in the company's net loss position for that year. This could be alarming as it imposes greater risk for the firm. However, it saw a drastic increase in its DTL for the following year, showing that with every 1% change in sales, there would be a 46.60% change in EPS. This value is closer to its DTL in 2017, which may suggest that it is the company's optimal level of leverage. Echoing what was aforementioned, the company may choose to bring this down to more manageable levels. Regardless, analyzing leverage is important because it can guide the company into what it can expect in its EPS in relation to change in sales, and ultimately what the company is earning for its shareholders. This can also help them discern the possible levels and combinations of both the operating and financial leverage.
After evaluating PCPPI's leverage, let us now discuss their capital structure. Observing the trend in the entity's short-term and long-term debt, it can be seen that there was a jump from 2017 to 2018, where the short-term debt decreased by 0.68% and the long-term debt increased by 210%. With this jump, there was also a noticeable decrease in the TIE ratio of 0.94%, as the incurrence of such long-term debt generally means higher interest rates. Being debt-reliant, the company has subjected itself to the possibility of defaulting on its interest and principal payments, but has also saved with tax deductions from interest expense. This reliance on debt of the entity could be explained by its stable increase in sales, as they would have more confidence in incurring such. Yet, as said previously, its operating income is not as stable, and it could be beneficial for the company to lessen its debt to more manageable levels. The profitability ratios of the company in 2019 were also not doing well, with the net profit margin having a poor rating, attributed to the large accumulation of interest expense from debt. Furthermore, previous analysis show that the stock of the entity is overvalued, indicating that it should issue more equity to take advantage of mispricing, which is explained by the windows of opportunity capital structure theory.
Putting into context the degree of financial leverage with the capital structure mix, its constant decrease implies that the company's EPS is relatively stable to changes in the EBIT. Thus, PCPPI can afford to incur significant amounts of debt but should still be at easily manageable levels to avoid an increase in risk. Moreover, as the previously observed operating leverage highly varies, the EBIT is sensitive to changes in sales. Thus, the company should carefully manage these variations because of the possible risk they may impose.
The capital structure mix displays the combination of debt and equity employed by a company to fund its operations and finance its assets. This is typically expressed in a debt to equity or debt to capital ratio, which is useful in determining the riskiness of the company's borrowing practice. Debt may come in the form of bond issues or loans, while equity is presented through common stock, preferred stock, or retained earnings. As seen from the table, PCPPI is more debt reliant compared to the industry, which is an indication of the entity being riskier for investors and creditors. This risk is reflected in the times interest earned ratio of the entity, as it can be said that it is less capable of paying interest on its debt. Additionally, it can be deduced that most of its assets are funded by debt, as seen in the table, where the debt ratio had a higher percentage compared to the industry average. This can be alarming for PCPPI, since this indicates that it may be putting itself at risk of default on its loans if ever interest rates suddenly rise.
As for the debt to equity ratio, it is also evident that PCPPI has been aggressive in financing its growth with debt since it has a percentage of 186.84%, which greatly exceeded the 48.75 industry average. Although it is difficult to compare among industry groups where ideal amounts of debt will vary, this ratio is still applicable in evaluating how much leverage a company is using. High leverage ratios are often associated with high risk for lenders and investors due to the significant amount of financing for potential growth through borrowing. It has a lower EBITDA coverage than the average but only with a small difference of 0.05. A lower ratio may indicate that PCPPI is struggling to repay lease and debt obligations due to the insufficiency in its EBITDA. Analyzing these capital structure measures is significant in achieving the optimal mix of debt and equity. With this, it can help attain the company's goal of maximizing the shareholders' wealth while minimizing its cost of capital.
To identify which capital structure would be most optimal for the company, the group assessed three capital structure options using a stock maximization approach. The options were structured with regard to the company's management attitude, current market conditions, and forecasted future prospects. The group was then able to conclude that Structure 3, or the structure where the company retires some of its stocks and replacing it with long-term debt amounting to 1 billion, would be a better capital structure for the company as it increases stock price to 1.91.
Under the trade-off theory, this optimal capital structure suggests that firm tax advantage of incurring more debt has balanced or exceeded the probability of the firm defaulting interest payments or going into financial distress. Interests as well are tax deductible in contrast to dividends. It must also be emphasized that though the EBIT EPS approach opts for the same structure, the stock maximization price approach addressed two of the former's shortcomings. One is the less consideration to maximizing shareholders' wealth, and two, the failure to consider risks. This just shows that relying more on debt financing, considering its higher risk, would still be able to maximize firm value through stock price. And if signaling theory is also applied, debt financing is viewed favorably by the investors, as firms are identified to have a higher chance of increasing earnings. However, if we were to apply the lowest WACC approach, structure 3 would fall at the last, though the three structures would not be better than the Kero one, since WACC increased under all options. It still increased the most under structure 3.
Let us now move on to PCPPI's dividend policy. For the last 3 fiscal years, the Board of Directors approved the following declarations of cash dividends: 162.5 million pesos in 2019, 163 million pesos in 2018, and 255 million pesos in 2017. Though it was mentioned that stock dividends could be paid out, there was no such declaration for the 3 periods. The company employs a constant payout ratio policy that is to pay up to 50% of profit as dividends. subject to the discretion of the board of directors. Their dividend payout ratio for 2019 and 2017 aligns with the policy, excluding the year 2018 due to generating a net loss that year. During the latest year presented, the percentage of earnings paid as dividends exceeded by 40%, which can be explained by the cost of having asymmetric information, a situation where managers are more knowledgeable of the firm's prospects than the investors. Also, due to a net loss incurred in 2018, there were no dividends provided to shareholders during that year. Thus, the entity aimed to compensate for this unfavorable performance and informed the market that the entity was able to recover losses in the prior year by increasing its dividend payout. This is also supported by the signaling theory that dividends are viewed favorably by the shareholders and the agency cost theory where shareholders are reassured by firms that managers will not waste their money when the dividends are issued.
Additionally, it can be observed that dividends paid are mostly in the form of cash. Under the bird in the hand argument, cash distributions are identified as less risky than future dividends or capital gains, since returns are immediately received. The catering theory also reflects this, since investors prefer cash currently amidst the pandemic and would be attracted to PCPPI's preference of declaring cash dividends. Nonetheless, it must be noted that according to historical trends, firms aim to increase their cash payout only when earnings are believed to be adequate to support increased payout and minimal risk of forcing the company to retreat.
After discussing our analysis for PepsiCo's financial statements, we now summarize all the relevant interpretations and provide feasible recommendations based on our findings.
The company's high degree of leverage, meaning EPS is more sensitive to changes in earnings, has consequently made the stock price volatile since EPS is also a component in stock valuation through the computation of growth. This correlation can be seen to a greater extent in the capital structure options that we have discussed, wherein leverage is increased in Structure 3 through additional borrowing, resulting in the highest EPS and stock price. In addition, the company's dividend policy and payout affect stock valuation as this is another component of the Gordon constant growth model. With this analysis, it can be concluded that stock price, leverage, capital structure, and the dividend policy of the entity are interrelated.
With all the analysis provided, it is suggested that PCPPI revise its current capital structure by retiring stocks through borrowing, which is proven to be the optimal capital structure option as it maximizes shareholders' wealth. Since PCPPI is delisting its shares and has been offered by its parent company to buy its remaining shares, the entity may accept this offer as this is also aligned with that.
According to a financial analyst, when firms go from public to private, their funding opportunities are minimized as banks would be less comfortable and loan lower amounts or increase borrowing costs due to shares not being publicly traded. Additionally, because of the delisting, PCPPI might consider changing its dividend policy as this could change the company's outlook regarding the dividends they employ. This is where our presentation ends. We hope we were able to thoroughly present this paper and highlight the concepts relating to the topics in financial management too. That would be all. Thank you for listening.